All right, well, we're getting pretty close to the end of our modules here. This one is in many ways something you've already done. We're just doing it in a bit of a more formal way. Summary writing, when you did immediate recall and you were writing down everything you could remember right away, that was in a sort of a summary, although you may have done it kind of in list form and different bullet list. Summary does need to be complete sentences and ideally complete paragraphs, but for our purpose, you're asked to do two things with this module, and that's a summary and a response. And it's really important that you keep these separate. So you'll notice on the worksheet there's a section for the summary and a section for the response. And I really, really want you to keep those different. What's the difference between a summary and a response? The main difference is, of course, that in a summary, you are talking about what the author said. You're putting into your own words the things that the author said. You are not putting your own thoughts in. And that can be a challenge, that can be a trick. Because as we read something, we're making connections, and maybe we're, in putting them in our own words, we're changing what they say. We gotta be careful with this. And a lot of times this happens when you're reading, say, an author who has something very controversial to say, or they're saying something that we disagree with or think is wrong. It's easy to try to water them down or try to modify what they're saying to make it agree more with what we already think. You have to avoid that temptation when it comes to writing a summary. If the author's wrong, then the author is wrong. And we're going to lay the author out there just as wrong as they are. In our response, we can come down and say the author's totally wrong. So the summary must stick to the author's points. That said, you can't just copy stuff down out of the book. That's not a summary. That's called plagiarism. And we've talked about this before. It's really important. When you're starting to jot down the author's ideas and you're using the words they used, it's really easy to trick yourself into thinking you understand what they've said when you really don't. Because you're copying their words, yeah, that's what they said, but if you can't put it in your own words, you may not really understand what they're saying. So in a summary, yes, it's important to put it in your own words. It's going to be important to use complete sentences and even put it in paragraph form. I will be a little forgiving, but this is how summary writing goes. So this is what you're going to have to do. The response is your reaction, your judgment, your opinion. Sometimes in college, we're reading about some stuff we don't have a lot of prior knowledge about. And so it's really common for us to say, well, gee, how am I supposed to have a judgment about this? They're the author, they're the expert, what they say goes. But the truth is you're a person, and you're the one who's responsible for what's in your mind, okay? And so it's okay to have a response. It's okay to say, I think the author is full of crap, I'm not sure I'm buying this. Or, gee, I think the author may have overlooked something. Or, I think the author is trying to convince me of something without giving me all the evidence. I don't know. But it's okay for you to have a reaction, to have a response, and to even have a judgment or an opinion on what the author had to say. It may be that they're the expert, and you may feel like you don't have the clout or the experience or the expertise to form a judgment based on what they say, but you are a person. So it's okay for you to have your opinions. And it's just that you've got to keep it separate from what you said the author had to say. So for each section of this chapter, read through it, take some notes. I'll show you something out of this communication book here. Here's a couple of pages where I've taken, done some annotating. And I'm going to take those annotations and I'm going to string them together into sentences to make my summary. That's a really good way of putting a summary together. Obviously, you can't do summarizing until you're finished reading, so this is an after reading strategy. But I'd like for you to read through the sections, and I strongly encourage you to take notes. As you're going through, maybe in the margin next to each paragraph, just write down a short little sentence or a little phrase that explains what was important there. And then you can go back through and just kind of string those together into sentences to make your summary. Obviously, a summary should be a shorter version than the original. Believe it or not, I have seen people summarize a 2-page article in 4 pages. That is not a summary. What that is usually is a ton of response. Nothing wrong with that, but we got to keep them separate, and you're equally responsible for both. You got to put into your own words what the author said, and then you can have an opinion about it. So, summary is always going to be briefer, a shorter statement than what the author had to say. So I encourage you to look through the chapter, look at the major headings and the minor headings, and really for each paragraph or so, take a little note in the margin. If you do that, that's going to make writing your summary so much easier. And just take them kind of one major section at a time. Summarize the section as best you can. As you know, a lot of those major sections have lots of minor sections, lots of details that help to explain things. So you might have to break that up into a couple of different paragraphs. But summary writing is just you putting stuff into your own words, not stuff, putting the author's ideas, the author's main points into your own words. Once you've done that and you feel pretty comfortable, feel free to look back. Do not use the author's words, but feel free to look back to make sure that your summary is complete. And then tell me what you had to think, what you thought about it. I know that in our classes, the kind of things that you study are things that relate to you. You have an opinion, you have a viewpoint on these things, and they have a personal relationship with you. So I encourage you to go ahead and to write your summary. And I know you have something to say, so don't wimp out on this one. Okay? Do a good job responding to what the author had to say. And it's okay if you agree with the author. It's okay if it's, yeah, I know this is true because here's what happened to me, right? So your summary and your response, this could be another really valuable tool in helping you down the road. Being able to write a good summary is a really important skill in college because on the one hand, it might help you condense information from a chapter into a more manageable study guide. Like you condense a 30-page chapter into 2 or 3 pages you have to study. That's a lot easier for sure. And also, when you're writing research papers, sometimes you have to have 3 sources, 5 sources, 10 sources, or 30 sources, or whatever. And as you're reading through a text and you find information that is going to help you write your paper, you summarize it, kind of set it aside. I used to do it on note cards, right? I'd summarize what's in this or that book, have my little stack so I can go back and look at the books if I have to. But being able to summarize what's important from a variety of sources makes it a lot easier for you to write your papers. I know, like most people, you are sometimes tempted to just write your paper, then go back and find 3 or 4 quotes that you think will fit. I mean, I can't blame you. It's a normal thing to do. It's not the best way to write a research paper that actually has any research behind it. So I encourage you to practice hard with the summary writing. It's definitely a good strategy for learning information, but it's also a good strategy for condensing information that you're going to have to use to produce a paper or a project or something like that. As always, if you have any questions, please email me and I will do my best to get back to you right away. That's kind of all there is to know for this strategy. I hope you guys are doing all right, and I'll see you again pretty soon.